Okay, so I went with Jocelyn to Don Chente Mexican restaurant, and when we first arrived, I was a little bit intimidated because I'd never been here before, and it was kind of a little hole-in-the-wall restaurant. But when we walked in, there were so many people there, and the decorations were so cute, and it was just a very welcoming environment. And when we were seated, they spoke in Spanish to each other, and it made me feel really happy because it's nice that this is a place like where they can embrace their language and culture. And it made me feel a little bit more immersed in their culture as well. And I'm from Florida, and there are very little authentic Mexican restaurants like where I'm from. And so it was a bit of a different experience being here in Texas. But I've been to Mexico before, and this restaurant's food reminded me a lot of when I was there. And this restaurant is well suited for its environment in Texas, but the food is very much authentic Mexican. And so I want to apply this to my classroom in the sense that I want my students to always feel comfortable to be themselves. Going to this restaurant, seeing how they combined the Mexican and American cultures will inspire me to be the kind of teacher that plays to all students' backgrounds. I want to make them feel safe and confident in their cultures, whatever it might be. And I want them to feel like they don't have to hide their language or their culture and stuff when they walk into the classroom. I want them to be able to embrace that and be able to come to me with all of their questions and needs.
Something that surprised me about going to the Asian market was just walking around and looking at the different flavors of food items they had. They were anywhere from mochi flavored, mochi, seafood flavored, sour pickled cabbage flavor, or even soy sauce flavored. And also another thing I noticed was that not everything was aggressively labeled as low calorie or trying to convince you of its healthiness, which I feel like American foods really do that. And so anyways, I was just like, why is this a shock to me? I feel like I should know about this. I went to school with international students. And anyways, I just was reflecting and I was like, my school just didn't teach me other worldviews or cultures, or it didn't open my eyes to that. And so something that is proposed is it's important to know other cultures' perspectives. And walking into this Asian supermarket, I realized I didn't know other cultures' perspectives, and I only know my perspective and the perspective of people that are just like me. And the fact that I was so shocked at these flavors and the way that they branded their food just made me realize like how unaware I am of other cultures. And anyways, it really struck me with a desire and inspired me to really implement multicultural pedagogy in my future classroom and to share these different perspectives with my future students, because they were not shared with me and it's hurting me now. And it's definitely causing me to lean into deficit perspectives, and I'm really having to actively fight those and combat them. And so anyways, yeah, I think going to the Asian market was definitely a wake-up call for me.
My experience at the African American Museum was really just one of learning. It was a big piece of history that I feel like our education system doesn't talk to us about enough at all. And there was a lot of stuff there that I would have never known personally, just because of the failure of our system to implement culturally diverse teachings into our curriculums. You know, the most that I knew about the African American history in America was like slave trade, the slavery period, the Underground Railroad, and a little bit of the Civil Rights Movement, like a brief mention once or twice at the Black Panther Party. But really getting to see the histories of these people and seeing how bad segregation was, I think that's an important part of our American history that needs to be taught in schools, especially to children who are Black POC, who may identify with these or may have had grandparents who went through these things. And it's important to teach them about this part of their history, so they do not feel left out. And I believe that would help us foster a more culturally responsive classroom if we were to implement topics like these.
Howdy! For the last part of the presentation, I'll be talking about the multicultural education lecture. The title of the lecture was We Have Seen This Before, The Racial Status Quo and the Anti-CRT Discourse by Dr. Chadwick James Galloway. A lot of his lecture reminded me of the journal we read titled Just What is Critical Race Theory and What is it Doing in a Nice Field Like Education? One of the things Dr. Chadwick mentioned was the fact that CRT has existed for way too long. Thus, it became an integral part of schools. And a lot of his lecture made me reflect on the ideas we talked about during class, such as deficit perspectives, white supremacy, immigration, at-risk students, and the school-to-prison pipeline. It made me realize how much bigger these ideas are connected. For example, in the journal, it talked about how if CRT governs a white teacher's mind, then many of them will unconsciously or consciously develop the white savior complex towards students of colors. Thus, students who are taught that everyone is immigrants will have a higher chance of rising to their immigrant status. Teachers will begin to find the right strategies, and when that fails, students become at-risk students and have a higher chance of ending on the school-to-prison pipeline. Dr. Chadwick helped me understand more what CRT is and how it is affecting not just the education field, but racial justice in all. Also, I know that Elise went to a talk where it talked about immigrants and how the lady talked about how she grew up being an immigrant and how that was hard for her and how that made it challenging in school. And so it just feeds back to this deficit perspective. These are our evidences. I know some of them are a little scattered. So for example, the African Museum, we did a scavenger hunt with Elise, Matt, and myself, and the rest of the evidences are there. Thank you so much, Dr. Worley, for this whole semester, for the opportunity that you give us for the Cultural Plunge project, and I hope you have a great summer.